So in the last release cycle, we had a late report of a CI failure for some of the ARM package builds, I think, of the MDE module package. And it turns out that it was a failure that was reproduced by a developer with a local build, but was not being shown by the CI builds. And this has to do with the fact that we have base tool sources checked in two locations, one being inside of the EDK2 repo and the other inside of the base tools repository for Python tools. And the tool change was actually made in both locations, the source file change. And this had to do with the library class priority selection involving CPU architectures and module types. So there was a priority where the spec said one thing and the implementation was different than the spec, and one of the tools developers updated it to match the spec.
Yep.
And this was not caught in CI because even though the source change was applied to the Python repository for base tools, the pip requirements in the EDK2 repo was not updated to use the latest version of the tools. So we were still using the version of the Python tools in CI before that change, but local developers were using the version of the tools with the change. And so the kind of that's kind of like the root cause of how did we end up in this situation where we had this very late catch of an issue that caused us to have to do a revert because of the from a compatibility perspective, with that late report, the best choice was to do a revert of the change for the release. And then after the release, we, I think, updated pip requirements and did the revert elsewhere and things like that. But to me, the root cause here is that we're allowing changes to go into the base tools Python repository without doing a CI build of the EDK2 repo or potentially additional repositories to make sure that the tools changes being applied there don't cause any regressions in our ability to build our content that we can at least verify from a TNO core perspective. And I know we've discussed that CI check before, but that has not been, deployed yet on the base tools Python repository.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that go through. I just didn't know that was what was being called out. Okay.
So I think the ask in this forum is, how much work is it to have PRs applied for base tools changes to do a build verification of the minimally the EDK2 repo, matching the coverage that we have when we were, would make base tools changes inside of the EDK2 repo before we switched to pip for CI agents.
Yeah, I mean, I think adding that is not hard. In fact, we've done that on the PyTool stuff. We have a test for that, right? I mean, I guess this is a good topic for here. I was wondering about this the other day. It feels like the base EDK2-base tools repo is still in half-baked state. I don't think many of the main files have been updated as far as like documentation of how the project is supposed to work. I don't think the project process is being followed. And I'm even looking right now, like the README has broken links in it. It hasn't been turned on, yet it was turned on, right?
Okay.
I remember we talked way back in like January of this year, right before the February stable tag, is that the tools maintainers pushed in a quick change to EDK2 that actually started using the pip modules where we weren't, that wasn't expected, or that was a surprise. So
Right,
I
and
guess
I think the EDK2 repo for developers now supports either pip or local sources from EDK2 repo, right? They can pick either one,
yes.
or local builds.
Right, right. Yep. I mean, I guess the question I have is, I think like some of these projects, but specifically this one since it's new and like it needs true ownership. And I think like all of the changes are coming from that I'm aware of out of Bob and a couple of the Intel engineers. Is so I guess my question is like, do we need to formalize that kind of stuff so that we can then put those responsibilities upon those people to
Yep.
bring up the
And I,
quality of this thing and improve the process?
right, and I think Bob has to be a maintainer on that repository. So I think, the base tools owners in EDK2 have asked and been accepted as maintainers in that repository. So I think that is absolutely the intent, that the same group of people that have been maintaining base tools that they maintain both sides until we can agree to delete the base tools Python sources out of the EDK2 repo.
Okay. Is that something you'll take back to Bob and others, or
He's already asked for that responsibility, and I think you granted it to him, right?
I think he has it. Yeah, he's been off running. Like again, my point is like we kind of, from my perspective, we set this up as a prototype and it's still in that state.
Okay.
The odd thing is that we're using it in CI and for EDK2, and I think that's the problem. I would say is we need to get this formalized and beyond the prototype state before we use it as the official mechanism in EDK2.
Okay. And are those entered already as like PRs or as issues in that repo of the set of things you think need to be completed for it to be considered fully baked?
There is some of them here. I'm looking at them now. So there definitely is some things here. There's probably more.
Okay.
And I guess again, I go back to I think we need to, I think in the EDK2 side there is a clear role for the maintainer, and the infrastructure work we've done has been kind of a combination, with you kind of being the common point. I don't think there is a person on the base tools project that has that ownership at this moment.
Oh, on the Python project, you mean?
Yeah.
Base Tools Python?
Yeah. Base tools
Okay.
Python. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know, Bob and Christine are not here today, but I would recommend that since they're listed, I think they're currently listed as the maintainers of the EDK2 base tools directory, that they be listed as maintainers over there. And obviously, you've done some great work with you and some of your team to get that, separate repository stood up and working to the state that it is, and making sure there's a clear understanding of what are the work items remaining, and this path to go retire and delete the base tools Python sources out of the EDK2 repo. And I know some discussions with Bob, and you probably have seen some of the patches for review of conversion of some of the existing C tools to Python, such that we can eliminate the C build out of our, the long-term goal of eliminating the C build to get tools running is one of the goals there as well. So there's a number of things here that are kind of a set of milestones that we want to hit as we move forward, so that not only are the Python sources removed from the EDK2 base tools repo, there's a potential that all the C tools could be removed as well as those conversions to Python are completed.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think this example of this gap in the CI, I think it highlights your perspective that base tools Python repository is not quite complete yet and has some gaps. And so I think the first step is document the gaps, I think, into the issues area, And then maybe you can have a separate discussion with Bob and Christine to make sure there's a clear understanding of roles and responsibility and set of work items remaining, and figure out how best to break those up. Because I know your team has some great experience with the PyTools on setting up things so that they work well with PIP publication and things like that. So I don't expect it's 100% Bob and Christine to get everything into place. There may be some things that can be shared.
Okay. Okay, I'll see where we can get over email, yeah. Or maybe we can reschedule one of these meetings in a more friendly time zone as well.
Yeah, and we could even just have that as a focus topic and work through the share the set of issues that you've entered and kind of work through them and make sure there's clear understanding of who's, and get the assignments done and priority, and kind of land out a roadmap of what we want to accomplish. I know
All right.
Bob and Christine have been able to attend this meeting in the past, so I'm sure if you have that as a special topic, we can make sure that they can attend ahead of time.
Okay, sounds good.
But I was just happy we figured out what the root cause of that escape was. And to me, the ultimate root cause is we have 2 copies of the tools. Terrible, right?
Yep.
let's that we have a short-term thing of a CI gap that would have caught it in the current state with two copies of the tools being maintained. But the ultimate root cause is let's get back down to a single copy of the tools.
Okay, sounds good. So we were just recapping the notes from the community meeting. I don't have any agenda for the day. Are there opens for today? Anyone else has?
Kind of, Michael, do you have status on CodeQL and maybe a revision of the RFC? Because I'd like to see us, if possible, to move to kind of an RFC with an actual time frame for comments, to see if there's any maybe objections to turning on that facility.
Yeah, let me share. Bringing it up here. All right, I'm using the same discussion because I'm trying not to spread too much information in too many different places and keep it concentrated here. This is my RFC. So as I posted this earlier today, as it says, this is a RFC draft of what I plan to send to the mailing list. So this one right here is kind of just formalizes a lot of what's been said elsewhere. And this would essentially, what I plan to do, as I say, is just send an email with a link to this, because I don't want to try to reformat this outside of Markdown. But this summarizes the basic what CodeQL is, our usage in EDK2, would be the fact that we can build databases locally, we can retrieve databases from CodeQL scanning server builds, we can run test queries locally against the database, whether that's generated locally or brought down from the server. We have the ability to suppress false positives. We'll do that on a case-by-case basis, and we can customize the files and queries according to what we want for the EDK2 project in a query suite file. So that's just setting up the basic set of possibilities that we have and what we'll do. For CodeQL and pull request, the proposal is to enable it in a step-by-step fashion. I talked about this last week. So the main goal behind this approach is to, let me zoom in a bit, is to make steady progress enabling it. And at the same time to not impact our day-to-day code contributions. So in this way, we can enable one query at a time, get all the code caught up to pass that query, and then we can check that in as a PR. And any code that runs from that point on will automatically start running against that query, so we can confirm that there's no regressions as those PRs happen, and the CodeQL action takes place in them. This is the final proposed starting list of queries. This is by no means the final list. It's just meant to be a list that we can go one by one and go through that enabling process. I know for a fact that for several of these, we're going to have over 100 errors because I've already run them. And for most of them, there are already fixes in place. We just need to port those to EDK2. This goes into QL files and talks about how we could, for people that weren't in the last meeting and are just reading the RFC, it does discuss how we could use query filters in order to query or in order to filter based on these tags inside the files. And I think I'm saying that we're rejecting that idea, and instead we're going to use a fixed query suite list, and we will update that list over time as we enable new queries. But our list will be fixed. It won't be based on the types of query or the severity level or tags or anything like that.
Right, but that could be considered for the future, but to get started, I think your fixed list makes a lot of sense.
Okay. And so enable one query at a time. It says here we'll get overwhelmed if we try to do too much at once. So let's just take it query by query. We have the ability to do that. Now, as I said here, that being said, we can configure inside the CodeQL scanning configuration in GitHub, you can configure the severities that will cause a pull request to fail. So if we find that there is a query during this process that's very useful, but we don't want it to fail pull request, we can enable those types of queries and there will be no impact on the pull request status. So that's just a note. I don't know if we necessarily want to do that. We just have the capability to do that for what's provided today. This goes through the basic PR. I didn't think there was much that needed to be updated here. Essentially, what we're doing would look very similar to this. It's just we'd have a fixed query list with one query to start with, but we'd still run through the same CodeQL GitHub action, and it would look very similar to this in terms of the way it's reported in the actions page and I mean the workflows tab and all that kind of stuff. This is saying that we can roughly expect CodeQL to take an hour. This is based on running CodeQL a few times against the code base locally and in the PR results, and looking at Project Mu results for about this number of queries being run. The queries are not actually the big part of the CodeQL time. The most of the time is spent generating the database. Most of these queries take anywhere from 15 seconds to 2 minutes to run, in my experience of running them. So the queries themselves are not going to take up a lot of time. We kind of just take that initial hit by building the database. And then once we have the database done, these are not too time consuming. But of course, we will run this as we did in the test PR in a separate job from the rest of the jobs that are running in the pipelines. So it will run in parallel to those. You can see that this one took 59 minutes to build the database and run the queries and that kind of a thing.
Was that a Windows or a Linux agent that did the build?
I think that was a Linux one.
Okay. And is there any opportunity, for example, if a PR only touches one package, so for example, like the MDE module package, that we can build just that one package and analyze the results, or are we required, because of the way CodeQL works, to build all the packages to update the database to do the query? If
we have a build that comes in against like MDE module package and we run the build command on that, we can just get those results. And I think that because that's the only code being modified, we can use those results. Whenever we initially enable a query, of course, we'll have to build all the packages and fix all the errors everywhere. But from that point on, we should be able to incrementally do the pull request and verify the results against the packages that are being touched. I think, though, there is a bit of experimentation that we might need to do for some of the packages that are particularly shared, like I guess it really comes down to our code coverage in those package builds versus, like, for example, whenever we build in module package, we're building null libraries. We should be building the non-null libraries as individual components, and those should get picked up by CodeQL. I'm just not entirely sure. I haven't looked at that comprehensively to know if we have all those libraries listed by components, and I haven't gone and checked that those are in fact covering the same errors that would have been caught if those libraries had been linked in the modules. So I can write that down as a to-do to
Okay.
explicitly confirm that, because I think that's what we'd need to know.
We should, it has been confirmed that every library is listed in the components. And I think, I don't see why our PR eval tool, which runs on our PRs to detect dependencies and if a dependency impacts a package, that should work. And I would think that it would catch all the new code.
I think so. I just have to confirm that's the case. That's all.
Okay. I mean, that should significantly reduce the build time. I'm thinking about cases if we go with this clean build of all the packages that take about an hour, Michael, but a developer submits a PR with a one-line change to one package, that the rest of the builds, finish in 10 minutes or 15 minutes at most, and then they're still waiting an additional 45 for the CodeQL step. That's a bit annoying, right? If there's a way that this is not the long pole in the tent for the PR build, that would be really great.
Okay. Yeah, my rationale down here around 59 minutes is that people can check results locally. So I think that is an option. I don't expect that everyone is going to be comfortable running the CodeQL commands down here. We can wrap these. I've talked about wrapping them before, but you can see they're not that complicated. We just need CodeQL installed and on the path. And then once it is, we just need to run this command to generate a clean build, and we are passing the clean flag there. So yeah, we can wrap these up however we want, but people can run those locally. And I did note that our contribution process requires patches to be on the mailing list for 24 hours anyway.
Yep.
So I guess the recommendation here would be before people send their patch, or I guess even after, depending on how they want to do it, I think it'd be recommended before to confirm their CodeQL results, and then they could just point to their PR, and it should be a pretty straightforward merge process at that point. Because they're going to have to go through a review anyways for 24 hours.
Yeah, it's just if they're trying to cycle through, like they forgot to do the local build, and then there's a CodeQL failure, but they don't even see it for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you might also consider is if we have some concerns about the issues that may be discovered for a minimal build based on files change versus a complete build of all the content, we could have a scheduled task, which are pretty easy to set up with GitHub Actions, that runs once a day or once a week, that builds everything as and generates the CodeQL request on a schedule.
Yeah, we just have to have someone who's responsible, I guess, for fixing those things, right?
You can tell it it's on a scheduled time, so it does it automatically.
But we still have to have. But I mean, things could get checked in with problems in that case, right?
It's basically going against the trunk, not the PR.
But that means a PR could get in that's problematic.
Yes, and then if you this is once again if everything passes through the minimal check, and the PR gets in.
Oh, I see.
There's an escape,
right,
that we're, because we didn't do the clean build, because there's some behavior of CodeQL we don't fully understand yet. Then doing the scheduled full build once a day or once a week, at least will get us informed of an issue that snuck in that we have to go fix quickly.
Okay. Yeah, this right now it doesn't even work if we don't do a clean build. It's not
No,
even
I
a
don't mean
matter.
a clean build, I mean a full build, all the packages.
Yeah, yeah,
Do
I
the full
agree.
database.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we could do. I think we could start with it using the Stewart PR eval. We could do it on the packages that are being changed in the PR, and we could do that. We just have to have someone who's responsible for actually looking at those results and acting on them, right, and just not let that accumulate.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. But
So
I think
that's.
I think
Okay.
it's mostly for those of us that are setting up this code QL PR based build. To me, the full build on a schedule, it would be those owners that would look at that first, because if there are no escapes that are caught, that there's nothing that is noticed by the build of all the packages that was somehow not caught by the PR eval build of the minimal, then that's interesting, right? And so then we want to refine our PR build so that we don't have to do those full builds on a schedule, right? It's really more of feedback to the developers that are working on adding this facility at the PR scope.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can I'll add that. I'm just taking a note to add. Okay, so I'll add that explicitly in here that we could maybe try that approach to begin with. And I think the main goal of this too is to improve the code. We don't have to be perfect all the time. Like fixing any of these errors is better than where we are today. So I think my goal is to get this in. We start getting these queries enabled. We start fixing real problems, and then we understand in practice what works best for us. Because I think as long as we're comfortable with the results that we're getting, that they're actual issues, and we're able to effectively address those issues and be able to understand that they're appearing, that's the main goal behind this. I don't really want to waste time on things like false positives and overhead that's not fixing actual problems. So I think we can go with that, and we'll see what it looks like, and then we can react based on that however we need to.
Right, and we could always go do on-demand code QL, of much more of turning up the set of checks that are run to see if there's anything significant that we want to go consider for turning on for our standard checks in the future. My
Yeah.
only question is this is enabled in the YAML file, just like all of our other CI checks per package, is that right?
It won't be in the CI YAML file. It will be at a repo level, but yes, it'll be in a YAML file there.
Is there a reason why, just like all of our other CI checks, it won't be listed at the package scope YAML file enable disable?
It's only because it's coming in from GitHub through its standardized workflows folder, as opposed to a CI plugin that like we wrote, or a build plugin that we wrote directly.
It's basically another build. So it's just like how we have,
Okay.
GCC5 and VS, right? It's just another build like that.
Yeah, it's just how GitHub Actions finds, the jobs to run for actions.
Got it. Okay, because I was thinking when you said that there's a way to obviously the turn on the number of checks that one at a time and kind of work through the code base. I just know with our other CI checks, we've been able to turn those on a per package basis such that we could get a focused focus on one package at a time for like spelling.
We can do that. It does give us the ability to do path patterns for ignore. So we can do it per package. We just have to do it slightly differently. We would just put the package paths in the path pattern there in the ignore list.
Okay, we might consider that as well as because I think it's important to get the maintainers and reviewers engaged. If we're going to see hundreds of issues pop up, you probably want to say, okay, is this a good week to go work on this package? or not.
Yeah.
Because I think it is important as quickly as possible to, turn on a check and then whirl that through the whole repository as quickly as possible. I think that makes sense, so that we're like constantly improving the baseline of quality that we're improving here. But I just don't want to go see us turn on checks that just sit with issues languishing for months. That would not be a good state to be in.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I want to have it be a mandatory status check, so that once it is turned on, we keep it enabled and we can't regress on it. I think I'd kind of prefer that we try to limit the amount of package filtering that we do. And we could do something like, say, let's get everyone to work in a branch and pass this query, and then once we pass the query, we'll merge the branch back into the master branch or whatever.
Okay.
Like some way to just say that, like, we can consider it done, and then if we find that there's two packages that haven't gotten their stuff working in the branch, we can be like, okay, you're not special. Like, go get your package to pass this query. And then try to get everything in together. So I mean, we at least that's what I hope we can strive for. If we have to
Okay.
get down to package filtering, we have that ability to do it.
Right.
I did mention. Oh, good.
I was gonna say, I think what you've listed there as a workflow actually kind of makes sense, because I don't want to take existing PRs that are fixing like a specific issue and then force that developer to fix all of the new queries that are enabled, in their PR, because they didn't introduce those. That was a collective contributions over many years that caused the set of issues that are in there. But I like the idea of opening a PR that turns on a check either on the repo as a whole, or incrementally adding the packages, and we have this open PR that we're rebasing as we work through the issues, until we get that check fully resolved through the entire repository. And then you can do the commit of that PR that turns on that check and has all the fixes for that check in one go.
Yeah, I think I can. That is what I was imagining. I don't think I explicitly captured that in here, so I'll take a note as well to add the fact that the query fixes plus the query addition need to be in a single PR. Ideally with all packages fixed in that PR.
Yep.
And I think that once we start the process, people will start to learn, how this works. Like, we'll split off a branch. We'll say we're enabling this query. In some cases, people might not have a lot of work to do. In other cases, the query might be particularly impactful, like the one where we're going to have to fix all the spots that don't check for null and just assert. So that, anyways, people go and they work in that branch. They do what they have to do to get their package to pass, and then once we are good with that branch, we can just merge it and keep doing that.
Okay.
The other part of this proposal, and I think I mentioned it somewhere in here, is that search for Python. CodeQL can work against several languages. The complete language list is here. So of these languages, the ones that are relevant for us for the most part are C, C++, which is treated as one, and then Python. For this RFC proposal, I'm just proposing that we do C and C++ for now. Python could be useful, but I think that we defer that and we focus on the C part is my recommendation.
And I'd agree. And from the discussion at the beginning of this meeting, the fact that we have separate repositories with our Python content in it for base tools and PyTools, if we turn on CodeQL, it should probably be inside of those repositories that are the Python focused repos for the issues there. And that the EDK2 repo, the long-term goal is to remove the Python content. So I think that's where our focus should be as far as applying CodeQL to Python.
Okay. I think that just about covers it. I have three pieces I'll add based on this discussion. One will be if I have time, I'll try to confirm that the library's build as components are giving us a sufficient coverage, or at least try to determine what coverage you're giving us relative to them being linked in to other packages. And then I will add a section on or I'll add a piece on the fact that we will run CodeQL on a package and PR for the packages that are being changed, and then we'll have a schedule probably once a day to go through and run against all packages. And we'll need an owner to be able to look at those results and react to those if anything comes up there. And then we'll use that to understand what the differences are that we're seeing between the PRs and what's happening there. And then the third piece is I will propose that we make the query fixes and add the new queries in a single PR together. Ideally, we would have all those packages fixed in the PR from a query enabling branch.
Right. And you might, just from a order, I know you listed a proposed order there, you might start with one that for which there's not a large number of issues. Just because I'd like to see us have a success, right? Turn on CodeQL for a check that's on.
Yeah.
So having the code base cleaned up for, 100% for one of these as the first one with a low number of issues to be resolved to get it to that state, and then we can move forward with those. 'Cause I think the ones that you said that like have hundreds of issues, those are going to take a longer period of time to get fully resolved.
Yes. I added that as a separate item that I will put in the in the RFC. So it'll propose that we do start with a query that has a low number of results to get our momentum going.
Yeah, and for us to work out the process, because it's going to require potential coordination between many package owners.
Yep.
You also last week, I think it was, you also gave us the link for the database of all of the queries. Maybe adding that link in here so that people don't have to become experts on CodeQL to find it. Or is it already here?
I think I know the link that you're talking about, and that link's not here at the moment, so I can add that.
Yeah, that way, somebody can go out and start looking at those.
Okay.
If they see something that are interesting, then they can lobby to get it added.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Of that list, that was on LGTM, I think is the one that you're talking about. I was showing there was about 400 queries on there, if I remember right. So if I go to LGTM, and I think here, I'm trying to remember which rules, and then under rules, I would do C++. Yeah, there's only 156, but there's all of these, right? So these are the ones I think you're talking about. People can go dig through these and see if they find anything useful in here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Michael. This looks really good.
All right, thanks. Yeah, if like I said, I plan to send this out on Wednesday. I'll leave it in the discussion for another 2 days if anyone has feedback. And then I'll send it out on Wednesday, and if I'll give it maybe the rest of the week for people to look at. If there's no concerns or anything like that, then maybe next week we can get started with that first query and get things going.
And just as a note on that, as you mentioned about the format of sending an RFC email, the link to this is good, but just so you know, it's completely valid to send a RFC in Markdown format, just formatted to 80 columns. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a plain text format of the content. That's the inline email.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if that would confuse people more than help them. But
No, I've done it before. I've sent the Markdown style for RFCs in the past.
Okay. Yeah, I can copy and paste it then, and I'll put a link at the top to let people know that there's a rendered version here, but I'll paste it below as well.
Sure.
All right, I'll stop sharing. Thanks.
Any other topics for the day?
Code coverage. There's been a great discussion in the last week on code coverage for unit testing. I wonder what your thoughts are, Sean, on CI versus local and the Visual Studio versus GCC, LCOV, and the direction there.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can catch up. So all I remember is the reply pointing to the way we've done that in Mu, the kind of the way we've modified the tool to make it work in the CI system. Was there more in that mail thread than that?
I gave the pointer to CPP, coverage, open CPP coverage, and I think that developer was not aware of that and thought that looked like a great solution for the Visual Studio side as well. So
yeah, that was my take on it as well. And I think what I owe on that was the quick write-up, although it is pretty much just look at the OpenCPP website and follow what they say, because it's really easy.
Yeah.
For local usage, right? And then GCOV is the solution for server usage.
For that, you mean the CI agent, right? Like what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder how we move forward. So I think there's two features here. There's the local usage and there's the CI agent usage. And it sounds like, Sean, you've got a proposal for the CI agent way it works. And I think you were suggesting that maybe a local developer would invoke the Stewart tools to generate the local coverage, but that would imply that if a local developer is using Visual Studio, that same CI plugin would support OpenCPP coverage.
So that wasn't where we were going necessarily, and I think I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember, but I think how we would invoke it wasn't completely trivial to do it in a plugin and to be able to make sense of the numbers. I don't recall it actually writing out all the metadata. I believe it just giving you a view to interact with after it's run the tool. So that's why it didn't make sense to run it as a script, essentially.
Okay,
so
and that's why I
at
wanted
that
to bring
point,
it
it
up as
was
an open
yeah.
open today, as I'm trying to understand what's the direction, the design direction and ownership, who owns what, and what's kind of the timetable that we can get both the local and the CI agent piece enabled.
Let me try to find that email. I mean, I guess I was hoping as they were working on the mailing list patch set for the agent, they would just pull in our change, but I don't know if that's been submitted. Do you know?
No, I've not seen it. So you might suggest that, so that they're trying to pull all the pieces together, maybe as a help to, for both the local and the CI piece all in one PR.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm just reading through that email. Okay, I will reply on that email. I agree we need to get it. I guess the other piece that we're kind of left at, again, if you recall, we've talked about this in the past, but today the coverage number is only based on the files that you've run tests on.
Mhm.
And so we're, I don't think it's at a point where we're good enough to say like this is the percentage of coverage and we should be using that number as any kind of data point that we publish, because that's not what it is.
Do you have
I'd love,
do you have an example output that you could share real quick from the Mu project?
yeah, let me go bring one up.
So we can kind of talk about the numbers that you're generating with that current version of the feature.
Yep, that makes sense. All right, I will screen up in 1 second. I don't know if anyone has done any work to actually go back and like analyze all of the source of the package to use that as the, the number of possible lines covered or branches covered. That's what we'd be looking for. And let's see.
I'd kind of be okay if we just had the list of components from a package and whether or not they were covered by a unit test at all or not. Majority of them would be no today, and that you'd only get a coverage number if they do have any unit test associated with that component.
To check on a per module basis and
Yeah.
provide a number on a per module basis.
Right, whether it's library or a module. And then and start there, because I agree with you that trying to provide a single number at the package scope gets confusing and would be probably likely misinterpreted.
Yeah. So here, let me share the screen real quick. Right. So here is a PR that was a while ago. You can see here in the GitHub view, you can actually still see coverage number. Which again is very confusing around what are you actually looking at. And so when you go into the details of this, what you can see is over here, test coverage, you get this kind of view, right? And so now you just see, and this is that view I was saying where online you could see what's covered and what's not. So
Right.
the red's not covered. Sorry if I'm scrolling really fast. I was hoping to find something that was covered. Here, let's go to this function. But this function is covered.
Yep.
So it doesn't give me the over, like what I really would love to see is at a package level, so that a package maintainer would be well aware and we'd all kind of know the state of a package.
Right, because even like in that table below, okay, so there it's showing
yep.
in the table below, it's at the function scope within the component that was built, right?
Yep.
Or the
Here is
component that was tested.
Yep.
You have the file scope and you have the function scope available, correct?
So once you go into a file, you have the function scope, right?
Okay.
I don't see function here.
And then you have for the whole module, you do have the summary there, the highlighted
Right here.
black
Yep.
shows the coverage for the entire module. And so I think that's the value I'd like to see for the package is list all the modules, and it's like if there's no unit test for that component, the coverage is in A. If there is unit test for that component, then there's that line.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. Trying to see what else we have.
And I'll ask everybody else on here what information do they want to see at the package scope for line coverage from the unit tests.
Any thoughts related to, I think our main goal is trying to encourage and see when, how bad things are and how when people make positive contributions, we want to be able to encourage that. Okay, well, if others have ideas, let me know. We will, I'll work with Guo or whoever that was submitting that mailing list, patch set.
Hey, Sean, I need to drop, so I'll let you guys finish this conversation.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thanks. Anybody else have anything for tonight on the tools meeting?
I was
No.
gonna ask, I was gonna ask Mike where we were gonna end up with the CI getting enabled on some of those packages, but I'll talk to him offline about that. I think there was still some discussion between he and Ard on
Yeah,
whether or not we were going to enable it.
and the possibility of moving some code out of EDK2 if it didn't want to meet the minimum quality standards.
Yeah, I just feel like we're kind of at a standstill there until we decide something to do.
Somehow I think we do need to bring more visibility to the tests, the packages that are not being tested, and the certain tests that are being turned off on a per package basis. I don't know if.
Yeah, I think that's the problem here is there's no obvious way to really know what's being tested at the moment, I guess. But I can say based on my experience of going through and trying to turn CI on the packages that don't have it, the packages that have CI on are of higher build quality than those that are not, in that they actually do build.
Yeah. Kevin, you had something as well?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Anyone else have anything?
No, thank you.
All right. Thanks,
No
everyone.
from me, thank you.
All right, thanks, bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.